Alright, we're gonna be watching Amityville Dollhouse. And I'm gonna be watching it and, doing whatever. And yeah, that works. We're drinking Cider Boys and Mad Bark tonight, among other things. Let me plug in this thing here. Turn off this fan that's, very close by. Whew. Do you like the awful Dr. Orloff? I have not seen that one. Yeah, I have not seen that one, most definitely. I think maybe that one might be on my list. It is not on my list. I was 8. I might have been thinking of The Hands of Orloff. Or Orloff the Mad Butcher. Hi. Yo, what's up? Yeah, so tonight we're watching Amityville Dollhouse. I bought the Amityville Cursed Collection Blu-ray set from not Severin, but from Vinegar Syndrome, and I've watched all of them except for this one. This one I've actually been interested in watching for many years. Because it's Amityville Dollhouse. How can you not be interested in seeing at least that one? But still. I really like the fucking quality they put into this little dollhouse in this film. Like, this is immediately interesting. Let me put on the subtitles and turn the volume down just a little bit more. And I'll just watch it, and as I wait for questions. Mm. Worst 70s exploitation film. Probably one that I reviewed very early on in my channel's lifespan. That review is either deleted or set to private by now. Uh, of a film called, I think it was Blood Shack. Let me. Yeah, Blood Shack from 1971, which I found to be very extremely boring. That one, Blood Feast is not Blood Feast, but Flesh Feast is another one that I can think of off the top of my head. Uh, yeah, Flesh Feast from 1970 is another one that is really bad. Three on a Meat Hook is all right. Is kind of an okay one. Honestly, you have to try hard to get me to hate your movie. Um, or just not try at all and be completely uninteresting from a even an entertainment or standpoint as somebody who knows at least a little bit about filmmaking. You know, when something is done poorly, I at least find it kind of interesting and entertaining. Now, if you're talking worst exploitation film in terms of its content, maybe The Gestapo's Last Orgy is probably a good place to look if you haven't seen that one. That one is really horrific. Or Sallow. You know, some people wouldn't consider that an exploitation film. I personally do. Um, I'm sorry, fucking Amityville Dollhouse is like already immediately fucking hilarious. Worst 80s slasher film. Damn. That one is actually kind of a rough one because honestly, I enjoy a lot of slasher films. Um, Even if I can't like necessarily get into them. Let me look at one of my lists. Worst of 80s horror. Let me see if I can find one. Igor and the Lunatics is really awful. I think it's Trick or Treats is one that is like really uninspired and kind of boring. Um, if I scroll through here, Death Screams from '82 is one that I'm not a big fan of. I gave that one like a 2 out of 10. Fuck. Blood Theater is bad. I kind of like Blood Theater, to be completely honest. I own the Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome with the slipcover, so I think that it says something. But, you know, Blood Theater is not necessarily very good at all. Crazy Fat Ethel 2 is really fucking bad. I hate that one. I legitimately despise that one. Um, Dr. Bloodbath is really awful. Really awful film about an abortionist who murders people who he provides abortions to. That one's directed by Mick Millard, who um, is responsible for Death Nurse, which is another one I could list. Is Scream from 1981? I haven't seen that one. At least not yet. In terms of when it comes to that film, I can't remember if that film was on my list or not, but it's a really bad one. We also have the movies like The Forest, and let me see here. I want to give a definitive list before I get to the next question of bad 80s slashers. Graduation Day, The Final Exam, Splatter University. I own that one on Blu-ray as well. I do kind of like that movie, but it's bad. Scalps is a bad one. Blood Cult, the 1985 slasher film, shot on video slasher film, is honestly really boring in my opinion. Let me see here. Come on, give me something good. Yeah, I think that's about it. What was the next one? Yo, have you seen all of the Amityville films? I'm actually watching Amityville Dollhouse as we speak. But the previous question, favorite director of all time. That's a very hard one because there are a lot of directors I really appreciate. Maybe not even necessarily enjoy, but if I had to give like a brief list of directors I really not even necessarily enjoy, but appreciate their contributions to at least the horror genre. Sam Raimi, Peter Jackson, Andy Milligan, Ted V. Michaels, Herschel Gordon Lewis, Al Adamson, Frank Henenlotter, maybe. Shit. I can't even fucking think right now. Stanley Kubrick is up there for me personally because I really like a lot of his movies. Yeah, no, I have seen the entire Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. I actually saw the third one at the drive-in when it came out, and I saw I think I saw the first one in theaters when it came out. I've always really been a fan of his Spider-Man films. I think his Spider-Man films are like the best ones. There are some elements of his, at least the first Spider-Man film, that feel very, very post 9/11 in terms of its willingness to show like buildings blowing up and stuff like that. Like that stuff is still in there, but it's kind of apprehensive, and you can tell that was very much a post 9/11 film. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing about it. And I look back and I'm like, man, fuck them for not being insensitive enough. Because I really like I really like all of the Spider-Man films from Sam Raimi. In all honesty, you have to really fuck up to make a bad Spider-Man film, because that's one of my favorite, you know, like I don't care too much about superheroes, but when it comes to Spider-Man films, I will usually see most of them that come out. I really liked Into the Spider-Verse. I really liked Spider-Man: Homecoming. The Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield were kind of really bad, but honestly, I've yet to see a Spider-Man movie that I despise. In terms of worst shot-on-video films, Murder Lust from '85 is one that immediately comes to mind. I was bored as hell while watching that one. Blood Cult, also I think from '85, is another one that like, is one of the first, is one of the earliest shot on video films. But like I really am just kind of bored by that one. That one's a snooze fest. Um, this one I'm gonna list, even though I kind of like it. A couple ones I'm gonna just mention because even though I kind of like them. Um, Mini Golf Massacre is one that is like a 30-minute long short film. Um, what is it? Mini Golf Massacre, which is a short film from like the mid 2010s, maybe I think. That's shot on an actual mini golf course. Like that film is really god awful, but I kind of enjoy it as like a time killer. Dr. Bloodbath, pretty much any of the films that Nick Miller did on video are qualified for the worst shot on video films. Even stuff like Death Nurse, which I really liked. Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorite movies. I really like Spider-Man 2, to be completely honest. Have you seen any of the Brain Dead films? They did Terratoons. I think it was Brain Damage films that released Terratoons. I really like Terratoons. Like, legitimately, I really enjoy that movie. That's one of my favorite bad movies. That's one I've been meaning to rewatch recently, but I've just been very bad about rewatching stuff. Like, stuff like that and the late 80s horror comedy Parents. Like, those are two movies that I've been, in recent months, saying to myself, I need to rewatch that, but I haven't. Brain Damage Films is interesting. I know that they're responsible for like the Traces of Death series, I think, or at least they distributed those ones. Which the Traces of Death series is interesting. Um, I'm not too big on Brain Damage films personally, but they did Terratoons, so it can't be all bad. I think they're responsible for Quilt Face, which Quilt Face is something to behold. I think it was written by Mark Polonio. And Quilt Face is a very interesting one. Favorite non-horror films? I'm gonna have to consult my list. I've had a few too many tonight, so please excuse me as I pull up my list of favorite movies of all time. I keep a list that I kind of try to keep regularly updated of of at least my top 100 favorite movies of all time. I don't think I have updated it recently. Yeah, last I updated it was January 10th of this year, so I haven't updated it recently. But let me just go through here. In terms of favorite non-horror films, A Clockwork Orange is one that I've always liked since I saw it when I was in high school. Pulp Fiction from I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Tarantino is one I've always really liked. Leon the Professional from Luc Besson. That one is one I've always really liked since I saw that one when I was like about to graduate from high school. My only problem with that one is that it's inspired by a relationship that the director had with like a 15-year-old girl, which is really, really fucked up. Old Boy is one that I will always stand by when it comes to, you know, kind of dramas that I really like. Taxi Driver is another one that I really enjoy. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's one that I saw when I was in. I saw that one actually in theaters when I was very, very depressed. And I was like, oh, I'll go see one of my favorite movies in theaters. That'll cheer me up. And I saw Taxi Driver in an empty theater when I was like very close to fucking killing myself. And it was a horrific experience. Pink Flamingos, Naked Lunch. I'm a very big fan of William S. Burroughs. The Warriors, Pink Floyd's The Wall, uh, Seven Samurai from Akira Kurosawa is one that I have like really loved and rewatched many times since I first saw it in like 2016, 2017. The Female Prisoner Scorpion movies, In the Realm of the Senses from Oshima Nagisa, Empire of Passion from Oshima Nagisa, Porco Rosso, the Studio Ghibli film, is one I really like. The Clerks by Kevin Smith is I love that one. Same with Mallrats. I'm just gonna go through this whole list. Battle Royale, not Perfect Blue. Riccio, The Story of Ricky. Lady Snowblood. Fritz the Cat is one of my favorite animated films of all time. I love that movie. The Holy Mountain, El Topo. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is one that I saw when I was in high school, and I've always really loved since. And I read the novel, or at least the book it's based upon, in high school, and I've always loved the original source material ever since. Pan's Labyrinth, Johnny Got His Gun is one that I saw in high school, read the novel a couple years ago, really horrific. Gummo, Love Exposure. Give me a minute. Love Exposure is a 4-hour-long Japanese romantic comedy, and I adore that movie. I've been meaning to rewatch it, but it's 4 hours long, and it is just so good. Akira, Brazil, the Terry Gilliam film from the 80s, is one of my favorite comedies. It's a very great dystopian science fiction comedy. The Lobster from Yorgos Lanthimos. End of Evangelion. I would highly recommend Love Exposure. It's directed by the same guy who did Suicide Club and Strange Circus and Tag and Tokyo Tribe and Why Don't You Play in Hell and X-Tay. He's a very good director, like one of the best Japanese directors out there. It's Such a Beautiful Day is one of my favorite animated films. I would highly recommend that. It's a very depressing, funny movie about essentially a guy basically dying of cancer. I'm almost there to the end of this list. Peter Pan, the 50s Peter Pan from Disney, is one of my favorite movies. I've always really loved that one ever since I was a kid. Belladonna of Sadness, another one of my favorite animated films. A kind of weird, I would consider it a horror film personally, but it's not too much into the horror genre. Let me go back and look at some of these questions I've overlooked since then. I seem to be really angry at Territoons 3. Yeah, Territoons 3 was fucking god-awful. I still regret watching that one. Best site for horror merch. I would highly recommend, in terms of horror merch, I would highly recommend Rotten Cotton. They have a bunch of good, relatively cheap horror t-shirts, some of which I own and wear to this day. In fact, I think I have one of them like in this pile of clothing. Yeah. Here we go. I have one of their shirts that I've had since high school. I wore this all through high school. I don't even think this really fits me anymore. But a shirt for Miss 45 from Abel Ferrara, which is really great 80s rape and revenge kind of vigilante film. But I've had this shirt since high school, and occasionally I will still wear it. But Rotten Cotton, Fright Rags is a very good one. I recommend, I think the website is called like $6 t-shirts. They got some good ones. Um, they're responsible for the one I'm wearing currently, which is a Wild Stallions t-shirt, which is Bill and Ted. But they also have some decent horror shirts that are only like $6-7. Faces of Death or Traces of Death, who won? Faces of Death, to be completely honest. That's the only one I've seen multiple entries from. To be fair, I only like the first Faces of Death because it's kind of a classic piece of shock horror cinema, you know? And it's one that I will always stand by as kind of a classic of the cheap shock film genre. And I mean, I own it. I don't own it on Blu-ray, but I do own it on DVD. So I think that says something about me as a human being. Just go on Best Gore. Yeah, no. I used to frequent the Gore subreddit on Reddit and everything like that. I used to go onto Rotten.com quite often when that website was up. You know, I'm a bit desensitized. I have a few VHS tapes in the other room. Stuff like Executions, Autopsy, what was that other one? I have one that is it's a really bizarre one that I've never heard of before, and I've never been able to find any information on. It's called The Bloody Faces of Terrorism, which I've watched, and it's interesting. It's an interesting watch, not a good one, in terms of like real gore documentaries. It's not a good one to watch. It's kind of boring, but there's some interesting moments. There's like an interview with the leader of like the Ku Klux Klan on there, which is kind of interesting. But wow, Bloody Faces of Terrorism, where'd you purchase that? I got it out of a VHS group I'm in, actually. The guy had a copy of it. He had a bunch of sealed copies of like real gore documentaries, and that's where I got the documentaries about autopsies from, and the documentary about executions, about the death penalty from. But that one I got from a guy in a VHS group. Seems to be a pretty legit copy, but yeah. Yes, fucking yeah. Love Exposure is 4 hours long. I still highly recommend Love Exposure because it is really, really fun and just really enjoyable. Worst non-horror film I've ever seen. Is it a Facebook group I would love to join? By the way, I love your channel. Thank you. I bought it from the VHS Horror Collectors Unite group, which is a group that was actually featured in a documentary film about VHS collecting called Rewind This, which is a really good documentary. I would highly recommend joining the group. There are people in there who are selling stuff all the time. There are some people who are scam artists who I would recommend be careful when buying stuff through there. I've never been scammed personally, but there are people who have been burned in that group. And they do, end up trying to get rid of the people who are scamming people, but still. Worst non-horror film. I'm gonna go ahead and probably say one of the worst non-horror films I've ever seen is probably... Oof. No, it's a group on Facebook. VHS Horror Collectors Unite is a Facebook group. I really can't give like a precise answer. I really can't give a precise answer to like the worst non-horror film I've ever seen because, like, I've watched a lot of the specific horror of the genre of horror of the horror genre specifically, so much so to the point that, like, I'm really familiar with the genre itself. If I had to give a 100% like definite answer, at least off the top of my head, it would probably have to be um, a very predictable answer, but like disaster movie or date movie or epic movie. One of those, like those are very predictable answers, but or the 41-year-old virgin who knocked up Sarah Marshall and felt super bad about it. Like that's one that I'm just not. I saw that one when I was like a teenager, and I was like, man, this is really fucking bad. Uh, usually when it comes to like bad movies that aren't horror films, they're usually comedies or dramas that really stick out to me. Disaster movie made me piss my pants in theaters. I was very young. Yeah. I remember my parents renting that from Hollywood Video when I was relatively young. And it was an interesting experience to watch that while young, because when I was younger, I honestly liked like epic movies like that. I'm just gonna pause Amityville Dollhouse because I actually want to experience Amityville Dollhouse on its own, not while being distracted by questions. So I will just watch it a little later on once I'm out of alcohol. Funniest movie ever might be Death at a Funeral. Death at a Funeral, I don't know. The US remake of it, I've seen, but I don't remember much of. The original version, I don't remember. Watch it in the dark. Yeah. The original UK, I think, horror, the dark comedy of Death at a Funeral was, is one that I've been meaning to see for a very long time. Again, I'm not good at watching good movies. I will watch garbage every day of the week. You have to like force me to watch a good movie. And there are tons of like great movies that I own on Blu-ray and DVD. Like legitimately great movies. In fact, I'm looking at one right now on my shelf. It's the Japanese anthology horror film Kaidan, which is a really great, like 3-hour long Japanese anthology film that is legitimately one of the creepiest films I've ever seen. And I'm looking at it. I'm dead straight looking at it on my shelf right now. But then right next to it, you have Necrophagia Through the Eyes of the Dead, and you have next to that, you have like Sex Android, as well as a bunch of other shit. Like my collection is very varied. Like there are good movies in here. There are great movies in here. I got Scanners on Blu-ray right next to Without Warning, the alien slasher film. I like the original a lot. The remake's not as good, but I still laughed a lot, honestly. What's the Asian anthology? Yeah. Let me grab that for you. It's the title is pronounced Kaidan, but the actual title of the film is Kaiwadan, which it's released by Criterion, which I think should be an indicator of the film's quality. The Criterion Collection fucking released this movie, and it is an absolutely amazing, beautiful, artful film. I would call this film perfect, personally, but it's not. But it's not a movie to sit down and watch lightly. This movie runs for 3 fucking hours. It's very long, but it's really great, and I would recommend it when you have the time. And it's also what I would consider one of the best horror movies of all time, honestly. Uh, Even if it is a movie that I've only seen once, and I don't know if I'll ever watch again because of the length and everything. But even as I'm sitting here talking about Kaiden, I am compelled to rewatch it. Um, my mom likes the Blood Island films. The Blood Island movies are honestly really fun. They're some of the best like '60s horror films in terms of like weird, bizarre, nasty type shit. Weird, bizarre, nasty type shit. They aren't good movies, but I personally really like them. And I think if I showed them to my family members, they might appreciate some aspects of them. How many Blu-rays and DVDs do I own? I don't have a definite answer to that. I know it's over like 2,000. Um, well, that is if you include the VHS tapes that I own. But I only own like maybe 50 VHS tapes. Still, it's over 2,000, uh, which is a lot. Like, quite literally, in this room that I'm currently in, um, which I will turn the camera around. I quite literally just have in this room. Like, that's all horror. You know, and the thing is, like, to the average person, like, this is a lot. This is too much. This is an obsessive amount of horror Blu-ray DVDs. But to me, like, I look at this every day, and when I wake up in the morning and everything, like, I see this every single day. I am living and breathing, and I look at it and I'm like, this isn't big enough. I need more. Which I think says something about me as a person. Uh, Sojo Tsubaki. I haven't seen the live action film of that one. However, I have seen the original, like 40-minute anime of Shoujo Tsubaki, which is a very disturbing movie. I really like it. And there's actually a guy in my VHS group who has a bootleg Blu-ray of the original Shoujo Tsubaki as well as the 2016 live action version paired together on a Blu-ray. He's the guy I go to if ever I need a Blu-ray um, or something like that. If I'm ever looking for anything interesting, he has a Blu-ray box set currently of um, he has a Blu-ray box set currently of films from Oshima Nagisa, who is uh, one of my favorite Japanese directors, to be completely honest. Oshima Nagisa is a very, very good director, and he's done a bunch of really interesting films, stuff like Death by Hanging, In the Realm of the Senses, Empire of Passion, Three Resurrected Drunkards, Violence at Noon, Pleasures of the Flesh. I don't know if Shoujo Tsubaki, at least the anime, is banned in the U.S. I would definitely, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like something that isn't available in the UK, or some European countries, definitely. But as far as the U.S. goes, they'll let anything fucking be legal here in terms of cinema. I mean, fuck, they let the vomit gore films exist and be sold as pieces of cinema when those films, in my opinion, are the opposite of cinema. Those are just garbage. I have 0 Blu-rays and DVDs currently. I'm 20. Yeah, start collecting, my guy. I'm about to watch The Killing Hour. Have I seen? No, I have not seen The Killing Hour. At least as far as I know. I've seen so many movies that there are times when I really need to just kind of look up a movie, whether or not I've seen it, to check whether or not I've seen it. You know, like there are movies that immediately come to mind. Like if anybody asks me, have I seen, I don't know, Kaiden or Jigoku or The Suckling or X-Tay or Hellraiser or Racerhead or Existenz. Um, you know, like I've seen, like there are movies that immediately jump to mind when when somebody mentions them to me, but then there's stuff like, you know, uh, fuck, I can't even think of a title off the top of my head. Like I guess Baghead, for example, where it's a movie that I've seen that I wasn't too big on personally. Like I own it, but like if somebody asked me, "Hey, have you seen Baghead?" I probably would have to look it up. Um, they don't get banned in the U.S. Yeah, not too many things get banned in the U.S. The only movies that have ever been banned in the U.S., specifically, at least from like wide releases in terms of Blu-ray and DVD releases, are Titicut Follies and uh, The Prophet, which I haven't seen The Prophet yet. But The Prophet was banned because it was a film criticizing uh, Scientology and calling it a cult, which I personally believe Scientology is a cult. Either way, that film got banned because the filmmakers got sued to hell and back by the Church of Scientology. There's also a film. There's also Titicut Follies, which violated HIPAA laws of doctor-patient confidentiality. I honestly think that that film should be released by fucking Criterion at this point because, like, that movie is legitimately fucking great. It's a really great, disturbing, depressing documentary. And you can only get it via paying like $40 for a DVD copy, and that is if you're in a nursing school or something like that, and you can prove that you are a teacher who wants to show this to your class. Do I think Don't Torture a Duckling is a sick film? Yes. I actually have a list on letterboxed. Let me see. Yeah, I have a list on letterboxed currently called I Hate Myself, Repugnant, Vile, Disgusting, Disturbing, Depressing, Gross, Bad Cinema That Will Make You Regret Existing. That is pretty much a list of like 602 movies currently, of varying degrees and levels of disturbingness. There are some movies that are on there because they're legitimately disturbing, some that are just like kind of disturbing or offensive, not disturbing, but like disgusting or offensive. Like, I put Glen or Glinda from Ed Wood on there. While I think that that movie is funny, some people might think that that movie is like horribly misguided and misinformed, and due to it aging very poorly, could be considered very offensive. I put like Song of the South on there. Like that's not a disturbing movie necessarily, but that is a very offensive and racist film. You know, so it's kind of the definitive list of this kind of shit. What's my letterbox? My letterbox is BiscuitBoo666. Yeah, I will actually I will send the link to the list to the fucking chat right now. There you go. That's the list to the that's the link to the list on Letterboxd. But it's a very long list. It's of 600 movies, and I'm still going. I'm still adding movies to the list and everything. And I mean, I have stuff on there that like some people might not even consider to be necessarily that disturbing or disgusting. But I'm trying to keep it legit. I'm trying to include a little bit of everything. Like, I have the erotic rights of Frankenstein on there. That movie isn't necessarily that gross or horrific, but it's an interesting movie. Um, and it's got some interesting aspects to it. It's a little, and it could be considered disturbing by some people. Um, have I seen the ecstasy of Mr. Carmichael's climax? I'm gonna look that up. I don't think I have seen that one, but I'm gonna look it up right now just to be sure. The Great Ecstasy of Mr. Robert Carmichael, I'm assuming, is what you're referring to. Who the fuck is sending me shit on Facebook? I don't give a fuck. Carmichael, Thompson cello player in the town of New Haven, becomes associated with several unsavory teenagers, attempted hard drugs like cocaine and ecstasy. This sounds kind of interesting. An empty film about empty people, just brilliant. I might have to add this one to my list just as a preliminary thing, because I do want to see like every weird. It's supposed to be very disturbing. Yeah, no, I mean, from the sounds of it, it sounds kind of disturbing. I know somebody asked if I like Ichi the Killer, and I think they just asked again. Did you say if you like Ichi the Killer? Thanks. Yeah, no, I like Ichi the Killer. In fact, I was just talking about it with one of my friends. Because when I was in high school, I saw Ichi the Killer, and I was like, that's a really cool movie. And I watched it with one of my friends when we were in high school. We used to get together every couple of months and watch movies together, just watch a bunch of movies. And I remember one night we watched Return of the Living Dead, Pink Flamingos, and a Serbian film. I know we watched some other shit in between. I think we might have watched The Toxic Avenger, for example. But I remember us watching on the same day Pink Flamingos, Return of the Living Dead, and fucking a Serbian film. And I remember it very vividly because me and my friend, because I had seen a Serbian film a couple times at that point, and he wanted to see it. And we watched it together, and we both started crying at the end of the film. After the film was over, we were fucking bawling our eyes out. We were both really depressed. And that's something that I always remember with my friend, Ryan. And, yeah. And I know another night we watched Ichi the Killer together, and we both appreciated it. And and just the other night he said to me, I need to rewatch Ichi the Killer because I remember it being interesting. And I'm like, yeah, no, you should give it a rewatch because I haven't watched it in a while, and I remember loving it the last time I watched it. I can't even tell you the last time I watched Ichi the Killer, to be completely honest. It might have been that time I watched it with my friend. But still, Ichi the Killer, great shit. The Toxic Avenger Part 2 is such a weird mess. I honestly prefer Part 2 over all the other movies in the series. Don't get me wrong. First one, absolutely classic. I will show that movie to everybody till the day that I die. If it is the only if I can only show one Toxic Avenger movie to anybody to everyone that I ever meet, it's the first one. Most definitely. However, the second one is one that I've always really liked, and I've always thought is a bit underrated. I mean, it's just Toxie goes to Japan, but there's so much there that can be done with it. And one of my favorite quotes in the entirety of in the entirety of cinema is used in that film, and it is in the scene where the guy who is supposed to be Toxie's father says, "I am the Big Mac, and I am also the Big Cheese. So therefore, I am the Big Mac with cheese." And I remember that very vividly when I saw the sequel. I watched all the sequels, like I want to say back to back when they came out, but I remember watching 3 and 4 back to back and not liking them. And then upon rewatching them when I, became an adult, I was like, you know what? The third one isn't perfect, but that one's still kind of fun. And the fourth one is a fucking modern masterpiece of cult cinema. I've gone from hard cider to fucking hard seltzer. Yeah, I saw Sergeant Kabuki Man when I was in high school. I wasn't too into it personally. I specifically remember the quote, I was confused, I was paranoid, and I was turning Japanese. Um, it having aspects of the mask is something that I definitely haven't really thought about until recently. Uh, but still, I need to rewatch Sergeant Kabuki Man because I didn't like it when I first saw it, and um, I didn't like Sergeant Kabuki Man when I first saw it. Yeah, there was a PG-13 version of Sergeant Kabuki Man, and that was the only reason that version existed was because the owner of Namco gave gave Lloyd Kaufman the budget to make Sergeant Kabuki Man, not knowing what the kind of movies that Kaufman was known for, and he returned this R-rated version, and they had to cut it down to a PG-13. There is an R-rated version. I'm pretty sure I've seen the R-rated version, but I can't personally say that I remember much about it. I remember watching it in high school and being kind of bored by it. And that was at a time when like all of the trauma movies were on fucking Netflix streaming. I remember seeing Beware Children at Play for the first time on Netflix streaming, as well as like a bunch of other trauma titles. Um, uh, I remember all of the Toxic Avenger films were on there. I remember like all of the Class of Nukem High films were on there. Um, shit, I have destroyed my brain with alcohol. I've ruined my life. Somebody stop me. Slow down. Have you seen Fight for Your Life? Yes, I have seen Fight for Your Life. And that's an exploitation film I actually really like. I've heard people call it racist. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's kind of unintentionally a very racist movie because, it's an exploitive film. However, I don't think the intention was to be necessarily racist. So, I can't sit here and say that Fight for Your Life is necessarily a racist movie, or at least it was outwardly trying to be racist. Very similar to Goodbye Uncle Tom, a movie that you can tell by watching it they were not trying to be racist. They were trying to fucking tell it like it is. But the behind the scenes stuff and the fact that the film is very exploitive kind of makes it into something that is just not necessarily pleasant to watch, and something that is not necessarily not racist. Why do all these fucking companies like think that people want hard seltzer? You know? I'm black and there's nothing worse than what Tarantino does. Yeah, no, I mean, like, Tarantino, to be completely honest, I like his movies, don't get me wrong. You know, Pulp Fiction, one of my favorites of all time. The 4 hour long cut of Kill Bill is great. And Death Proof is great. But, like, when Tarantino tries to tackle films that involve, specifically that involve race relations, it comes off as very, very much like something, very much like, Tarantino is just trying to say, hey, guys, look, I'm black too. Like, there's a fucking video I saw, which I highly recommend people watch, where it's like, it's called Tarantino's New Business, where he opens a morgue and crematorium and funeral home strictly for black people. And at the end of it, he says, now this may sound racist, or like halfway through it, he says, this may sound racist, but don't worry, I'm black. Like, that is honestly how I think Tarantino thinks as a person. And this is coming from somebody who genuinely likes his work. I didn't like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood personally, but that was because that movie is just kind of without a purpose other than, to have a final act that's violent, and again, even the violence is without purpose. But still, Tarantino isn't a great guy. 12 Years a Slave. Yeah, I've seen 12 Years a Slave, and it's definitely not a pleasant movie. It's a pretty disturbing film, honestly. But I still think, like, in all honesty, the most disturbing movie of all time is Goodbye, Uncle Tom. Like, it's a film that I've seen once. I watched it one time. And I watched it with my fucking older sister, mind you. I watched, like, the last half of it with my older sister. Can you say piss, please? I'm sorry, but that's it. That's the greatest fucking question I've ever received. But still, I first watched Goodbye Uncle Tom with my older sister, at least the last half of it. And I've not watched it since. That was when I was, like, still in high school, I think, which was about 5 years ago. And I haven't watched it since. I own the movie on DVD. I own it, unfortunately. I hate myself for owning it, but I do. But I can't, I can't justify its existence, necessarily. Say Goop Job, you lard fuck. I can't tell if, like, this is supposed to be a joke, but I'll say Goop Job. And piss. I can't find the I would dig through my fucking drawers. I would dig through all of my dressers to try and find the shirt. But I do have a shirt that one of my friends gave me for Christmas that says piss drinker on it, that I wear occasionally. Yeah. I thought The Nun was spooky. I can't say that I watched The Nun, because I can't be fucked to watch most movies. I'm not good at watching good movies. Although I heard The Nun. Can you say these questions are getting pretty random, please? Yeah, no. I think that this is kind of a joke. You like Reddit? Yeah, no. I'm on Reddit occasionally. I mainly use Reddit for porn, to be completely honest. Like, That's one of the only things it's good for. Um, you know, there's a horror subreddit that I don't frequent, but I used to frequent. The gore subreddit used to be kind of cool. Same with the Watch People Die and WTF subreddit. But, you know, they've recently kind of declined. I think I'm pretty sure, actually, at least last I checked, the gore subreddit is completely gone. That may or may not be true, but still, um, I remember like checking my subscription. Jesus fucking, these questions are getting fucking weird. Um, have you ever seen a film mix piss, vomit, blood, and cum? Um, you know what? I think I have, and it's probably one of the vomit gore films. Probably Slow Torture Puke Chamber, because that's where the piss started to come into play in Lucifer Valentine's filmography. I really hate having to sit here and say, like, oh, the piss came into play in Lucifer Valentine's work in this film. But like, I know that because I fucking hate myself. I watched Regurgitated Sacrifice last year. I rewatched it for the first time since high school. Um, and Regurgitated Sacrifice is absolutely fucking horrific. Like, I remember liking that one in high school. And, oh my fucking god, this is getting very bad. And I'm just like, goddamn, what the fuck, man? Do you like femboys? I'll drink to that. What's that Eric Andre meme? Cheers, bro. I'll drink to that. But no, in all honesty, like, yeah, I can get down with that. I'm bisexual and or pansexual. You know, like the old saying goes, I'll fuck anything that walks. If you don't walk, we can figure something out. Um, that's a quote from Gene Simmons, believe it or not. But to be completely honest, you know, I think I would identify as pansexual. Like, I don't, honestly, as long as you're a good person, you got a good personality, you're relatively good looking, I'll do it. Have I seen the Baldy Basics movie? Let me fucking do a quick Google. Oh, Baldy Basics. I know about this fucking, like, meme, because it's kind of become, like, just a meme in general. I don't know anything about it personally. Possession, I think, mixed cum, period, and period of blood, I think. You know, I haven't watched Possession in quite a while. I do own the limited edition Blu-ray of Possession. Which, you know, Possession is like one of those movies I really, really love every aspect of, despite it being very weird. But I think that there's definitely a lot going on underneath the surface of that film. Will you be seeing Candyman or Halloween Kills? This is like 1995 all over again. Yeah, I'll be seeing both of them. I've always really liked the Halloween series. And I saw the 2018 Halloween film when it came out and thought it was alright. I'll probably do a video about it, about Halloween Kills, very similar to how I did to the 2018 Halloween. Candyman, on the other hand, I will probably see. The Candyman, at least the first Candyman movie, has always been a movie I've always really liked. I saw that one when I was fairly young. I remember catching that one on cable, I think. and always really appreciating it ever since. You ever go catch worms? I love worms. I watched last Monday the Worm Eaters. Well, Monday of 420, I watched the Worm Eaters for the first time in a couple of years, and the Worm Eaters is kind of an amazing movie. Cougars or femboys? Who won? You guys are trying to like fucking like. You guys are really trying to fuck with me. Aren't you? Either way. Probably Cougars, to be completely honest. It's a very close battle. Um, yeah, I think this Ninja Plays account is probably just trying to like fuck with me. Do you know what a poggers is? I don't, bruh. I don't know shit, man. I sit in this room, all right. All I do, all I ever do, is sit in this room. I put on a good album, and I fucking get wasted, man. That's all I ever do when I sit in this room. And occasionally I'll watch a bad fucking movie. But right now, it's fucking In Court of the Crimson King and hard fucking seltzer. How was my 420? My 420 was fine. Did I see the Grudge remake? I did not. I know it was directed by the guy who did like the photos of, or like the pictures of my mother or something like that, which I know is like kind of a pseudo art house movie that people liked. I didn't see that one. I'm gonna start ignoring certain questions. Have I seen the original Grudge? Yes, I own that one on DVD. And I've always thought it was a pretty interesting film. You know, I've never been like too much of a person who buys into the hype for it. Personally, the hype for me when it comes to J horror, especially like early 2000s, early to mid 2000s J horror, for me, you know, the films that really deserve the hype are movies like Pulse, the Takashi Miike's One Missed Call, and Noori the Curse, which is an absolutely amazing film that, especially the Noori the Curse, is an absolutely amazing movie. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing the title, but it's a Japanese film, found footage film. It's basically the Japanese equivalent of like the Blair Witch Project. It's really really good. It's a movie that kind of sucks. It hasn't gotten a Blu-ray release in the U.S. because it's a really great flick. ABCs of Death. I actually really like the ABCs of Death movies. I really like the ABCs of Death movies. I saw the first one when I was in high school. The second one when I got out of high school. Both of them, in my opinion, are kind of mixed bags. but I like the fact that they're mixed bags. I like the fact that they're both extremely unique movies in terms of their premise and their content. They have a lot to offer, and I'm not necessarily mad about either one of them. Do you think most of Jess Franco's films are bad? I actually quite like Jess Franco as a director. He's very interesting. He's done some really interesting stuff. The Erotic Rites of Frankenstein is one that I personally really like from him. Same with his slasher film Bloody Moon from the, I think, mid to early 80s. Is a pretty interesting little slasher flick. Um, Vampirus Lesbos is one that I honestly kind of like for its stylistic aspects. His Jack the Ripper film from the 70s with Klaus Kinski is very interesting. I'm trying to think of what else Just Franco is responsible for. I can't think of too much off the top of my head, but Bloody Moon and The Erotic Rites of Frankenstein and Vampirus Lesbos are like two of the ones that are top of the list in terms of just Franco's filmography. Wanda the Wicked Warden from Just Franco was really bad, and Oasis of the Zombies is probably Just Franco's worst movie. But he's an interesting director. I don't necessarily like him. I don't necessarily hate him. The Town That Dreaded Sundown is creepy as fuck, almost like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I honestly like The Town That Dreaded Sundown. 1 minute. I honestly like The Town That Dreaded Sundown more than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Personally, unpopular opinion, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is kind of overrated. Don't get me wrong, I like it. It's a cool movie. I appreciate its contribution to the genre. But there are movies I think that are better than it, most definitely. And The Town That Dreaded Sundown is one of them. That's a movie I saw when I was in high school. Didn't appreciate it, didn't like it. Rewatched it as an adult and was like, man, this is actually a really great film. And it's super creepy. The director of that film did another film called The Evictors, which is a really, really great kind of slasher flick. Sort of kind of slasher flick. That I think really preys on, those classic fears of like home invasion and stuff like that. When it comes to horror films, home invasion is one of those things that really, really, I think works for me. There's tons of home invasion horror films, but only a handful of them really get to me. Stuff like The Town That Dreaded Sundown, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. The Evictors. Oh, fuck. What was the other one I was thinking of? Angst, Funny Games. Those two are really, really great home invasion horror films. Them, the French film Eels. That's a really great one. There's some really good home invasion horror films out there, or at least films that kind of dabble in the subgenre. Deranged. Hmm. Oh, yeah, Deranged, Confessions of a Necrophile. I personally like that one more than Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Deranged is... Deranged is a movie that I personally really, really like, and I need to buy a Blu-ray of. It's legitimately one of the creepiest horror films of the 70s, in my opinion. A very uncomfortable horror, kind of psychological horror film. I personally think it works better than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre does when it comes to its scares. Um, I think it works better than a lot of 70s horror films do when it comes to their scares. Without naming them, do you have any horror titles that you're embarrassed to own? Well, I mean, without naming them, it's kind of hard, but I guess I'll give brief descriptions. Um, I own Blood Beach. I would be very embarrassed to own Blood Beach because I fucking despise Blood Beach, to be completely honest. Um, when it comes to horror titles, I'm kind of embarrassed to own. I would probably have to say one of them is a Japanese shot on video film where a woman has a hole cut in her gut and then is fucked in that hole. And yeah, that's one of them. Another one is probably a film where a woman mutilates her own genitals with a toothbrush. There's a Nazi-ploitation film I own where two women are like tied together in a 69 position, and their mother and daughter. Um, and they're tied together that way in order to prove that like Jewish people are inferior because they're more likely to commit incest. That's the actual um, that's the actual like you know premise, or because at least that's one of the more disturbing scenes. There's one about a guy who about a couple of guys. There's a Japanese one I own, but a couple of guys who cannot like achieve an erection without like a woman's intestines being involved. So they go around and they torture and murder women, and that one's a pretty nasty little flick. Um, Shit. Let me just kind of lean. A movie about a dwarf who gets women addicted to heroin and then chains them to beds as prostitutes. That's one. Yeah, any vagina torture slash blood, I look away. Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely one of the ones that's kind of a rough watch. It's one of the reasons I haven't watched stuff like um, Assault Jack the Ripper. I mean, that's not the only reason, but Assault Jack the Ripper is one that like I have on my hard drive. I've been meaning to watch, but I'm not good about watching things. Uh, but still, there are quite a few movies I'm kind of embarrassed to own. Funny story, kind of related to this conversation. There's actually a film I own, which I'm gonna name, um, called The Life and Death of a Porno Gang, which is a film I believe is actually like a masterpiece of low budget horror cinema. Um, but no joke, I took this girl on a date, and we had lunch together. It was a little bit of an awkward date, but I paid. We had a good time. I had a good burger. I'm not too upset. We come back to my place, and she's like, "Hey, I want to watch a couple movies." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And I show her my entire collection. I show her my horror films, my non-horror films, and she picks out of my entire collection. She picks Coneheads, which is a film that I saw when I was very young. In fact, the first time I saw it, I watched it on VHS. My aunt, who had who actually passed away in February, she rented it on VHS from Hollywood Video when I was very, very young. And I remember watching it and thinking it was very, very funny, despite not knowing, not understanding any of the humor in it. And I still thought it was very, very funny when I was younger. And we watched that one together. And the other film she picked out, which, one moment. The other film she picked out was The Life and Death of a Porno Gang. Now, I don't know, because this was in the horror section, I don't know whether or not she realized this was a horror film, but The Life and Death of a Porno Gang is a horror film. It's a dark comedy as well, but it is a horror film. And she picked it out. She wanted to watch it. And we watched the entirety of Coneheads. We had a good time. We yucked it up. Cool. Great. Then I put in the Life and Death of a Porno Gang. And to be fair, this movie is like a kind of a dark comedy drama for the first half of the film. And then it veers hard right into the horror genre. And I love this movie. I do. Like, I legitimately think that this film is a masterpiece. However, she picked it out. Alright? She's the one who grabbed it. I wasn't like, hey, we should watch Life and Death of a Porno Gang. She's the one who picked this out. For our first date movie, we watched The Life and Death of a Porno Gang. We did a double feature of Life and Death of a Porno Gang and Coneheads. Now, we watched this, and we watched like the first hour together, and she was like, you know what, actually, I gotta work tomorrow, so I have to do laundry, so I gotta cut this short. We haven't talked to each other since, mind you. But she, like, quit halfway through The Life and Death of a Porno Gang. And I think it's because she realized it was a horror film. However, still, I watched The Life and Death of a Porno Gang as a first date movie, and that is a story I will tell until until my death, to be completely honest, because it is a hell of a story, because everybody always makes jokes about, like, oh, The Human Centipede, that's a great first date movie, but I watched The Life and Death of a Porno Gang as a first date movie, and I haven't talked to the girl since. I think that says something about me as a person, and I didn't even pick it. I didn't even fucking pick it. Your collection... Was my collection much smaller? Definitely. That was about 3 years ago. And to be honest, 3 years ago, my collection was a bit smaller, and um, I haven't been on a date since. Not necessarily because, like, I can't get a date. Although, to be honest, I don't think I could get a date. I'm too weird, awkward, and I need a lot of alcohol before I'm willing to talk about things. However, um, however, uh, I did get a boyfriend, um, around that same time, shortly after that, who broke up with me this year. So, 3 years, 3 years of a relationship like that, which really sucks. But I didn't make him watch the Life and Death of Porno Gang. I did make him watch fucking Santa Sangre, The Wizard of Gore, half of Reanimator, um, Manos, The Hands of Fate, The Toxic Avenger, Female Prisoner Scorpion. So I did subject him to some shit too. Most beautiful drama film that can make you tear up anytime. To be completely fair, probably Grave of the Fireflies. Like, that's one that, like, everybody lists as one of the most depressing movies of all time. But, like, Grave of the Fireflies, I've seen once. I don't want to see it ever again, personally. I saw that when I was a senior in high school. I don't want to watch it ever again. Because that movie will fucking ruin me now that I've faced adult life. I am fucking done with that shit. No, I cannot do Grave of the Fireflies ever again. Same goes with Come and See, which is getting a Blu-ray release from Criterion here soon, which I will probably end up buying and rewatching because I hate myself quite a bit. Threads, which is one I rewatched very recently, didn't make me cry, but Threads is one that's like, man, I want to fucking die while watching it. To be completely honest, I haven't seen a movie that's really made me cry since Grave of the Fireflies did in like 2015. Maybe Dear Zachary, which is another one I would list as one of the most depressing movies. I'm looking around my room, like, trying to think, man, what's another depressing movie? Johnny Got His Gun. I have the fucking poster for that fucking film right there. Fucking, I got the poster for Johnny Got His Gun. Johnny Got His Gun. Holy fuck. Okay. Let me take... Let me take a moment to talk about Johnny Got His Gun, because I feel like this is a movie that not a lot of people talk about, and I want to... Give me one moment here. Okay. Johnny Got His Gun. Okay. So, Johnny Got His Gun was a film that I saw when I was still in high school. And when I saw it, I was really, really depressed by it. And in fact, I have it in my body horror section of my horror film collection. because I personally consider it to be one of the most horrific body horror films of all time. And it's not even necessarily body horror. Johnny Got His Gun is a film from the 70s, from the early 70s, directed by Dalton Trumbo, who was a writer. Dalton was a writer who was blacklisted in the 30s and 40s, I'm pretty sure throughout a lot of his career, especially after writing the novel basis of Johnny Got His Gun. But he was blacklisted as a communist writer. I don't like to get political on my channel. I don't like to get political on my live streams necessarily. However, I want to make it clear that as somebody who talks about sleazy, disturbing, explicit horror films, I'm very much somebody who leans to the left. I'm very much somebody who supports, who is a feminist. I'm very much somebody who, I mean, hell, I'll straight up say it. I'm a communist. And give me another minute here. Like, I own the manifesto. I'm honestly communist, in my opinion. I just threw that on my bed. However, that doesn't matter at all. I recommend everybody, no matter your political affiliation, to read this book, Johnny Got His Gun. This is one of the most, like, if somebody were to ask me what the scariest novel, what the most disturbing, horrific novel I've ever read was, I would say Johnny Got His Gun. This isn't a horror novel. This is a drama. This is a fucking drama novel. Alright? Think about that for a second. This is not a horror novel. And this is one of the scariest novels I've ever read. I read this after I got out of high school. And I saw the film before, well, while I was in high school. The film is a movie I've personally loved, despite it being really a rough watch. It's a movie I've really liked since high school. However, the novel, I don't want to read ever again. In fact, I don't want to read it so much so to the point that I want to listen to an audiobook version in order to confirm that this is as horrifying as I remember it being. This book, oh my god. I read this over the course of a few months after I got out of high school. And I hate myself for reading this. I really do. It is a book that brought up many bad memories in my life. In fact, I don't even remember this very well. But I remember during a family reunion when I was probably in like the 5th or 6th grade, I nearly drowned in a in-ground pool that my like great uncle has. I barely remembered it. However, there's a chapter in this book and I kind of want to find what chapter it is. Okay, I can't find it, but there's a chapter in this novel where the main character, um, you make me want to buy books again. That book in particular, um, I'd recommend Johnny Got His Gun to anybody. Like I said, without political affiliation at all. Like you could be a pro-war person. I would highly recommend you read this. This is a brilliant piece of literature. This was written by Dalton Trumbo right after World War One. So the war was fresh in his mind when he wrote this. However, I remember a specific chapter in this book talking where the main character Joe, who is, completely without contact with the outside world, uh, he is dreaming about being by the riverside with his girlfriend. Um, and suddenly he feels like he's underwater. He feels like he's drowning almost. And he keeps trying to breathe and feel air. And through feeling water splashing on him, he realizes that I haven't even given the plot of this novel, but it's basically a novel from the point of view of a guy who was in World War One, who was hit by an artillery shell and left without any limbs and without a face, with no contact, with no ability to contact the outside world. He's trapped inside his own body. But he starts to feel water splash on his chest, and he thinks that he's in the river that him and his girlfriend were having a picnic at, drowning, and he's trying to gasp for air like he's freaking out. And he realizes through feeling the water splash on him that there's nothing left of him. He realizes that from like the mid-throat all the way to his forehead is nothing. It's concave. There's nothing fucking there. And he's gasping and gasping for air, and he realizes he's breathing through a tube in his throat. And that moment made me... I was reading that, and I had to fucking drop the book then and there, because I started to think about when I was so young, like 15 years ago. I mean, not even 15 years ago, but, so long ago when I nearly drowned, thinking about gasping for air and unable to. And I fucking had a panic attack. I did. I freaked out, and I fucking... I honestly, in the middle of reading this book, started crying. Like, some people have complained that the film adaptation of Johnny Got His Gun isn't very well acted, and which is easier for you, disturbance-wise, the film or the book? The film. The film is easier, much, much easier to handle. Like, I own the book, physically. I own this. I don't want to read it ever again. The film, however, I watch every couple of years because it's a really good movie, but the acting in the film isn't the best. And one of my friends who saw the film on cable when he was very young rewatched it a few years ago. I want to say probably about a year ago, and he said that it wasn't as disturbing as he remembered it being on cable when he was a kid, but it was still a pretty depressing read, or a pretty depressing watch. And and this friend of mine, I told him, dude, read the book. The book is much, much worse. Like, it wasn't as nearly disturbing as he wanted it to be. And I said, dude, read it. It will ruin your life. It really will. And he bought the book since then. Since then, he hasn't finished it, mind you, but he's purchased it since then, and I think that says something. But Johnny Got His Gun is something that I only recommend to people who are really mentally stable and able to handle something that is really horrific. I want to read a specific section of this book. Because this is absolutely horrific. Okay, here we go. So, one of the horrific things about the book and the film, when you compare the two, is that the film gives you the comfort of knowing what's going on around Joe as he's experiencing this experience. The novel does not. There are moments where he thinks that he's in the trenches and rats are chewing at his limb, are chewing at his limbs, and he is absolutely having a nightmare, thrashing around. When really it's probably nurses removing the stitches from what's left of his limbs, and he is just left there as a fucking goddamn potato sack, pretty much, of a human being. But still, let me read you a little section of the novel for context as to, especially towards the latter half of the novel, for a little bit of context as to how horrifying this book is. Take me into the schoolhouses, all the schoolhouses in the world. Suffer, little children, come unto me, isn't that right? They may scream at first and have nightmares at night, but they'll get used to it, because they've got to get used to it. Because it's best to start them young, gather them around my case and say, "Here, little girl, here, little boy, take a look at your daddy. Come look at yourself. You'll be like this when you grow up. Like that when you grow up to be great and big, strong men and women. You'll have a chance to die for your country. And you may not die. You may come back like this. Not everybody dies, little kiddies. Closer, please. You, over there, against the blackboard, what's the matter with you? Quit crying, you silly little girl. Come over here and look at the nice man. The nice man who was a soldier boy. You remember him, don't you? Don't you remember little crybaby who waved flags and saved tinfoil and put savings in thrift stamps? Of course you do, silly. Well, here's the soldier you did it for. Come on, youngsters, take a nice look. And then you'll go into our nursery rhymes. New nursery rhymes. For new times. Hickory dickory dock. My daddy's nuts from shell shock. Humpty Dumpty thought he was wise till gas came along and burned out his eyes. A diller, a dollar, 10 o'clock. Scholar blow off his legs and watch him holler. Rockabye baby on the treetop. Don't stop a bomb or you'll probably flop. Now I lay me down to sleep. Bomb-proof cellars, good and deep. But I'm killed before I wake. Remember God, it's for your sake. Amen. Let me find another section of this that is really, really bad. Will I make any short films for YouTube? Maybe. Um, Recently, I've been very, very depressed. Obviously, by the fact that I'm drinking fucking hard seltzer and reading Johnny Got His Gun to an audience of 2 people. Yeah, Baby Hands was one that I made right after high school. Um, you know, let me just, okay, I've got the other quote that I wanted to read from Johnny Got His Gun. If the thing they were fighting for was important enough for them to die for, then it was also important enough for them to be thinking about when. For thinking about. Fuck, okay. I hate my life. If the thing they were fighting for was important enough for them to die for, then it was also important enough for them to be thinking about it in the last minutes of their lives. That stood to reason life is awfully important, so if you've given it away, you'd ought to think about, with all of your mind, in the last moments of your life, the thing you traded it for. So did all these kids die thinking of democracy and freedom and liberty and honor and the safety of home and the stars and stripes forever? You're goddamn right they didn't. They died crying in their minds like little babies. They forgot the thing they were fighting for, the things they were dying for. They thought about the things a man can understand. They died yearning for the face of a friend. They died whimpering for the voice of a mother, a father, a wife, a child. They died with their hearts sick for one more look at the place where they'd been born. Please, God, just one more look. They died moaning and sighing for life. They knew what was important. They knew that life was everything, and they died with screams and sobs. They died with only one thought in their minds. I want to live. I want to live. He ought to know. He was the nearest thing to a dead man on earth. Okay, here's the other one. Then where was this freedom the little guys were always getting killed for? Was it freedom from another country? Freedom from work? Or disease? Or death? Freedom from your mother-in-law? Please, mister, give us a bill of sale on this freedom before we go out and get killed. Give us a bill of sale drawn up plainly in advance what we're getting killed for, so we can be sure that after we've won your war, that we've got the same kind of freedom we bargained for. In short, Johnny Got His Gun as a novel has ruined my fucking life. And I kind of hate it for ruining my life, but at the same time, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of literature. That, despite being published in 1939, still hits hard as fuck in 2020, in my opinion. But, that's it for now. It's been like 2 hours. I want to watch Amityville Dollhouse. So, you know, I'm gonna call it here. Anyway, thanks for chilling out. Thanks for being here. You know, for this 2-hour drunk Q&A live stream and spoken word reading of Johnny Got His Gun. This is Basic Boo Horror Reviews. Actually, wait a minute. Oh. One last treat. What? Huh? What are you growling about? One last treat is my wiener dog. Motherfucker, you better quit growling at me. I'll let you in here. I'll let you sleep on my bed. He doesn't like me. Alright, that's it. That's it. We're done. Come on, Rock, let's go to bed.